Good morning, I'm WaywornWyrm, and welcome to my channel. And welcome to Hoard of the Dragon Queen, Episode 5, Save the Mill. The 6 members of the Heroes of Greenest slowly made their way through the burning remains of Greenest as they headed toward the town's mill. The cultists were trying to set the mill on fire, something that would cripple the mill for months and would force the town to have at least one winter without enough food or lodging. As they picked their way through the town, there were several times where they saw shapes moving through the smoke and darkness, but they never got close enough to see who it was that was moving through the darkness. Finally, they reached the mill and saw 6 apparent cultists stacking and lighting straw at the edges of the large barn-shaped building that was the mill. A few small fires were already going. Flint Finder held his arms out to halt the progress of the group as he hunkered down. Let's watch for a minute or two before we just rush in. Something about this just doesn't seem right. If anyone disagreed with him, they didn't say anything, and the group as a whole hunkered down with him and watched the cultists as they went about their business. After a couple of minutes, Mara let out a small gasp. Do you see what they're doing? Morn and Quora nodded in sync with each other. Yeah, Morn said. This is just for show. The fires are all badly placed to actually catch the building on fire, and are all easily extinguishable. Quora butted in. Not only that, but the placement is perfect to make it look like the mill is either on fire or about to be on fire from a distance. I smell a trap. Flint Finder nodded. Agreed. Let's be on the lookout for a trap. However, we do need to fight these people off, because I have a feeling that if their trap doesn't catch anything, they will simply adjust and burn the mill down for real. Garrett was the first to ask, and as was his custom, he rushed in without heed to if the others were there with him or not. He rushed to one cultist and stabbed them in the hip with a short sword, then used the sword as an anchor point and flipped up to kick the cultist in the head. The unprepared man crumpled to the ground dead from the blur of movement that was the halfling. Quora was next and threw a ball of acid between 2 of the cultists, setting up another pile of straw. The ball burst as it reached them. Neither of them saw the ball until it was too late. One of them had her hands burned by the acid as she moved to protect her face, but the other one got a face full of acid and started screaming, breaking what little surprise the group might still have had. Mara was next and ran forward to put the cultist who had a face full of acid out of his misery. She hit him solidly in the chest with her mace, and his scream cut off with a woof of breath as he stood and fell dead at her feet. It was now the cultists' time to react. The 4 remaining cultists pulled out their scimitars, and 2 attacked Garrett and 2 attacked Mara. Garrett fought both of them off, even managing to do a palm strike at the wrist of one of the 2 attackers, causing their sword to go flying. Mara was not so lucky, as both of her attackers found weak spots in her armor and sliced deep into her. Morn shot a mote of fire at one of the cultists attacking Mara to help her. The cultist who had been burned by acid went up in flames from Morn's spell and fell dead. Leave one alive! Flint Finder shouted as he rushed in to try and knock out one of the other cultists attacking Mara. He clocked the cultist in the head with the flat of his longsword, and as they crumpled to the ground, he ran over to Garrett. And he ran through one of the cultists there with his short sword, causing them to fall dead. Tess grimly smiled as she waded into battle with her greatsword. You didn't leave much for me. She cut down the last of the cultists like a farmer reaping wheat. She then walked over to Mara and laid a hand on her, suffusing her with holy energy. "Let's enter the mill." As they pulled open the large double doors that made up the front of the mill, they saw a massive stone grinding wheel that dominated the main floor. It was still hooked up to the water wheel outside, so it was moving loudly. They knew there was a high chance of a trap, but there didn't seem to be any place on the main floor that could be used for that, so as they filed in, each person was warily looking at the loft above them. Garrett and Morn both pointed up to the rafters and shouted, "Look out!" Most of the group had seen the group of 12 cultists waiting above, but those who did not were able to react normally due to the shouts. Garrett ran over to a nearby support and used it to run up and leap to the second floor and start engaging the people up there. 6 of the cultists were like the ones outside, just wearing robes, but the other 6 were armored and had spears and shields. Garrett stabbed one of these armored ones deeply with his short sword and did an open palm strike to a specific pressure point and knocked the woman out. Quora shot a mote of fire at one of the robed cultists, who went up like a Roman candle and ran screaming out of a second-story window. 2 of the armored cultists moved to attack Garrett, who turned one of the spears to the side, but as he did so, he lost the other spear tip, and the cultist attacking him with it stabbed deeply into his kidney area. The other 3 threw spears down at the group waiting below. 2 of them struck into Flintfinder, one quite deeply, who simply laughed the injuries off as he broke the spears off just above where they entered his body. 3 armored cultists then jumped down to the main floor, pulling out another spear each. Mara rushed forward and smashed one of the armored cultists in the face with her mace, but her foe stood firm. The 5 robed cultists all jumped down and prepared to fight. Mara shot a mote of fire at the guard who had hit Garrett so hard. Flintfinder deftly moved through the guard of one of the armored cultists and stabbed him in the gut with his longsword. As his first target sank to the ground, he attacked the injured cultist he was now behind. His short sword made short work of them. Tess smiled thinly again. "This is more like it. I like my options." With her greatsword, she took out one of the 3 remaining armored cultists, leaving only the robed cultists on the main floor. Garrett looked at his situation, and for a brief moment, he was unsure, before a plan solidified in his mind. Starting with the one whose spear he pushed aside, he stabbed them with his short sword, and then spun around them to sweep the legs of the cultist who had struck him. As he swept her legs, she fell backward through one of the several holes in the floor of the second story, and she landed, unmoving, on the dirt floor below. Quora shot a mote of ice at the remaining armored cultist, who was covered by the ice, and stopped moving. Mara struck out at one of the robed cultists with her mace. The man crumpled without a sound as she hit him. The 4 remaining cultists lost their nerve and began to run out of the back door of the mill as they watched most of their ambush party being cut down in seconds around them. Morn's mote of fire stopped one in their tracks. Flintfinder raced forward and dispatched 2 more with his swords. Tess pulled out one of her javelins and stopped the last fleeing cultist, ending the fight. "Let's gather up our prisoners and wait for the reinforcements," Flintfinder said coldly. Several minutes later, several blood-covered, but none the worse for the wear, guards met up with the group at the mill. "Thank you for securing this for us. We'll remain here for the rest of the night to keep the mill safe." Flintfinder nodded at them. Yes, I doubt you'll have much trouble. But it is a good idea for you to stay. With those remarks that slightly baffled the guards, the group made their way back to the keep with their 2 prisoners in tow. Once there, Flintfinder demanded to be shown to the prison cells, and then had a private interrogation session with each of the prisoners. Thank you so much for listening to Episode 5 of Hoard of the Dragon Queen. Make sure to tune in on June 12th for Episode 6, The Challenge. And make sure to tune in tomorrow to the next episode of the Monster Manual Backward.